Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 650 and today's date is April 24th, 2015. And the title of this episode is The U.S. Government, Central Bankers, and the Elite Are Preparing for the Collapse. Now before I get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that I have a new YouTube channel. It's called X22 Report Spotlight. And this new X22 Report Spotlight channel, I am going to conduct interviews with experts in different fields. And I've interviewed David Morgan, which is the first person on the X22 Report Spotlight channel. And I will be doing interviews throughout the week. I have many interviews set up. We're going to have guests like Michael Snyder from the Economic Collapse blog, Andy Hoffman, Paul Craig Roberts, going down the line. We have them set up for different and various times, and there's many, many more people that have been contacting, and we will have them on the channel. So those people who are on my email alert, you will get an email once I upload the interview. And those people who listen to me on YouTube, those people I will place the link in the latest video that I do. Once it is uploaded, I will place the link for that video so you can find the channel, or you can just go to YouTube and type in X22 Report Spotlight. And there is a space between X22 Report and Spotlight. And it should pop up. If it doesn't, refer to the link. And basically, I'm going to do this each week. There'll be more interviews coming. Bear with me. I'm trying to work out Skype, the sound, and getting a faster connection so I have a better sound quality in the interviews. So as we go along, it should get better and better as time goes on. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Greece is having discussions with the EU, and as of late, the talks have completely broke down and they failed. And we understand that payments are coming due to the IMF. And we also understand that the 4-month bailout extension expires in June. While the talks were in progress, Greek Finance Minister Varoufakis published a blog post that said he was ready to meet demands. And basically what is happening is they will meet the demands, but they will not impose austerity on the people. And we have to remember, the central bankers want austerity, and the government was elected on not implementing austerity. And this is where we're having the problem. And again, getting more debt is not going to help Greece whatsoever. It's just going to continually put them further and further into debt without spurring economic growth. He went on to say that the current disagreements with our partners are not unbridgeable. He also said that Greece will agree to sell national assets to raise money and that his country's tax system must be reformed. However, the finance minister stood firm against further wage and pension cuts. Is Greece leaving the Eurozone at this time? Well, Varoufakis said that in order for Greece to remain in the Eurozone, international lenders have to work with Athens to lessen the grip of austerity. And this is where the major problem is. And again, at the same time all this is happening, we understand that Greece has been linked to Russia. They signed a new deal. And we're going to have to see how this plays out and which way they actually pivot. Now, out in Spain, we see the unemployment rate has increased to 23.7%. And basically, the economic recovery in Spain has gone from jobless to job loss. It looks like they're doing the same thing in Spain that they've done in the United States. Those people who cannot find a job, they are saying they have just fallen off and they don't really want a job at this point in time. And we know that this isn't true. What's really happening is the jobs are drying up and people cannot find them. Right now, what we see is about 127,000 people have fallen off. And the employed right now is about 17.4 million. The unemployed is around 5.4 million. And the unemployment rate, of course, is 23.78. But the youth unemployment is 50%. So they're losing jobs. People can't find jobs. And they're not being counted. Sounds very, very familiar to what's happening here in the United States and how they're manipulating and fudging the numbers. And we see that the economy is not improving whatsoever. Durable goods have missed expectations for 5 of the last 7 months. Durable goods, new orders jumped 4% month on month in March. And that sounds great. The corporate media is out there and they're saying this is incredible. Durable goods, it's way up. It's the biggest jump ever. But when you look closely, we see what caused the jump. It was new aircraft orders in the defense area. The same thing occurred in July. And basically, if you strip out these new one-time orders, guess what? Durable goods new orders fell by 0.2%, missing the expectations of a 0.3% rise. This is a one-off thing to fool everyone and to convince everyone that everything is fine. And once after this passes, durable goods are going to collapse once again. It's not naturally growing. Meanwhile, one can now add core durable goods to factory orders, wholesale sales, export growth, credit rejection, and control retail sales as declining year over year. So basically, everything is declining at this point, not getting better. Retail is down, factory orders are down, and now we can actually add the durable goods. I mean, the Baltic Dry Index going nowhere at this point in time. We see that U.S. business investment spending plans fell for the 7th straight month in March. The report from the Commerce Department on Friday came on the heels of lukewarm data on, guess what, retail sales. Not a really big surprise there. On employment and housing starts, showing that there is insufficient growth momentum that the economy is going absolutely nowhere, basically. There is no growth, insufficient growth momentum. Yeah, what that means is there is no growth and we're in a decline. So the Federal Reserve is out there saying, hey, you know what? Since we have insufficient growth momentum, we're going to have to delay interest rates until maybe later this year or next year. Well, because you know what's going to happen if they raise interest rates. Those mortgage applications are going to plunge. Housing sales are going to plunge. It will bump people out of the market completely. Those people who can only get into the market for housing right now at 0% down, subprime level with 0% or 2% or 1% interest rate, guess what? If the interest rate goes up, they are completely knocked out and it dries up and the entire thing collapses. The same thing with the auto industry. The same thing with almost everything. And this is why they've been holding back, because they know this. You know it's really bad when the Senate food workers walk off the job. Those people who serve the food to the U.S. Senate. They're saying that we are paid at low wages and we want an increase. Those manning the Senate cafeteria, along with other food services and janitorial works, raised the issue of living wage pegged at $15 an hour by labor advocates. President Obama issued an executive order in February requiring that federal contracted employees earn a minimum of $10.10 an hour, but the Senate workers and other federal contract employees are urging the president to up that to $15 an hour. One of the Senate cafeteria staff said he makes about $12 an hour, which is not enough for him and his daughter to live on. He added, even though I work 7 days a week, putting in 70 hours between my two jobs, I can't manage to pay my rent, buy school supplies for my kid, and put food on the table. It is completely impossible to make it. Right there in the government, we have people struggling. I mean, I remember a time when, going back to the 40s, to the 50s, where you can have 6, 7, 8 kids. You can work a factory job, put food on the table, pay for your rent, and still have money left over. Today, it is not like that whatsoever. It is getting harder and harder to survive. And this is why we see the older population going back to work, because they cannot make it on their retirement. We see the central bankers, we see the U.S. government, we see the elite. They're all preparing for this collapse. We know what the U.S. government is doing. They're nationalizing the police. They created DHS. They're putting up barriers in front of the government buildings. They're ramping up on the amount of ammunition DHS has. They're spying on everyone. The central bankers, they are preparing to shift the blame to another country so they're not blamed. And we see the elite, like Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase. What are they doing right now? Well, according to a detailed report from the Wealth Watchman, JP Morgan Chase has stockpiled physical silver in anticipation for a major liquidity event. Just recently, JP Morgan Chase came out and said, listen, you cannot place cash in your safety deposit box. You cannot place silver or gold in your safety deposit box. Here's the breakdown. April 7th, they purchased about 1,110,000 ounces. April 8th, 1,280,000 ounces. And this goes on. The last purchase on April 16th was 1,183 ounces. The total amount of silver purchase was 8.3 million ounces of additional silver in 2 weeks alone. They all understand. They all know what's coming. The system is breaking down. Here are some signs that we're entering the next phase of the global economic crisis. And this is coming from the Economic Collapse blog. The rig count just continues to fall as the U.S. oil industry implodes. Incredibly, the number of rigs in operation in the United States has fallen for 19 weeks in a row. McDonald's has announced that it will be closing 700 poor performing restaurants in 2015. If the economy is doing so well, why is McDonald's shutting their restaurants? This is the cheap food that people go out and purchase because they don't have the money to go to a more expensive place. I mean, you can get things for $1, $5. We also understand Tiger Direct is closing their stores. And during the first half of this year, there were thousands upon thousands of stores closing. The number of publicly traded companies in the United States that filed for bankruptcy during the first quarter of 2015 was more than double the number that filed for bankruptcy during the first quarter of 2014. New home sales in the United States just declined at their fastest pace in almost 2 years. U.S. manufacturing data has been declining dramatically. We see that things are really getting bad out there. The government has no way to explain it. The government is continually putting out the illusionary, manipulated numbers. But again, what's happening here is what's reality and what's manipulated are moving in two different directions. And the government, the central bankers, the elite, they're running out of excuses. They're running out of ways to explain what is happening. I mean, we've seen a huge amount of layoffs. Procter & Gamble right now is going to be laying off between 3,000 to 6,000 office jobs. Ford, 700 people. Mullen Group, 1,000 people. Where are all these people going to find these type of jobs? It's getting harder and harder to find work. Not easier. I mean, people have been writing in. They've been saying, especially those people who've been graduating college, those people who've gotten laid off, people who've been laid off for quite a while, they've been sending their resume out, and they're saying the market is very, very tough. Yes, there are places where you can get very low paying jobs, but where they were at before, at the level they were at, it is very difficult. And you have to remember, everyone's like, oh, you know what? No big deal. But you purchased your home, you purchased your car, you have certain payments at that level. And what that means is, if you cannot find that work, how will you pay for everything? And it's not just the physical items. What about health insurance if you're paying for that? What about other expenses like electricity, gas, water? And when these people can't find these jobs, houses foreclose, cars are repossessed, and we're going to see this happen more and more. Now, we understand the corporate powers, the U.S. government, they're all getting ready to basically take away everything that we can possibly do. And what I mean by this is the government is taking away our rights, or at least trying to convince us that they can do this, which they cannot. But of course, they're out there trying to convince everyone they can. We see corporations right now trying to control us in certain ways. We see John Deere and General Motors want to eviscerate the notion of ownership. Basically, they don't want you working on their products. Even if you purchase it, they're saying you actually don't own the product. You don't own the car. And I'm not talking about a lease. I'm not talking about a finance. I'm talking about when you actually paid off the finance and you own the car. When you actually paid in cash. A leased car is basically like a rental. And they're saying those people who own their cars or their tractors or whatever you have no right to tinker with it, to fix it on your own. And they're using the copyright law to push this agenda, to say we have special software that's intertwined into the automobile or the tractor or whatever, which means you have no rights to do it. But we have to think about this. People get ideas. People learn when they tinker with things. And when you purchase an item, it is yours. You're the owner of it, not the company anymore. And we can see that the company is arguing that allowing people to alter the software, even for the purpose of repair, would make it possible for pirates and third-party developers and less innovative competitors to free ride off the creativity, unique expression, and ingenuity of vehicle software. Other automakers pointed out that owners who make unsanctioned modifications could alter their vehicles in bad ways. They could tweak them to go faster, or change engine parameters to run afoul of emissions regulations. Well, I hate to say that. This is not the manufacturer's concern. If you change something and your emissions do not meet the requirement, guess what? It's not the corporation. It's not the copyright laws. It's the EPA that will fine them. If your car goes faster, the police will stop these people. This argument is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is a way for corporations to control the people and keep them from learning and doing things. They went even further. GM went so far to say, locking people out helps innovation. Really? That's like saying, locking up books will inspire kids to be innovative writers. It's absolutely ridiculous what they're trying to do here. Now we see out in Ukraine is turning away from Russia, which we knew was going to happen. Ukraine's state company has signed an agreement with France on enriched uranium supplies to Ukrainian nuclear power plants. Ukraine previously worked solely with Russian companies, but now they're moving away and going towards the NATO countries. Russia is out there, and they are saying that it is absolutely ridiculous that the U.S. should send military troops into Ukraine. They had a meeting with the European side to talk about peace and the Minsk II agreement. The U.S. diplomats did not show up whatsoever. They didn't put in peacekeepers. They didn't have a dialogue. Instead, they stayed out of it and they brought military into Ukraine. And this is absolutely everything they're trying to accomplish in Ukraine, and that is peace. And again, we have to remember, the central bankers, they do not want peace. Ukrainian forces right now opened fire on Russian humanitarian aid convoy. One member of the convoy was killed, one wounded, 6 captured, and they said they were driving to Shirokino region with humanitarian aid. They were basically put on a different road by Ukraine, and it seems like it was a trap, and they opened fire. Among the members of the crew was a journalist, Boris Ovich, who intended to film a report on civilian life in Shirokino. Well, I guess they didn't want that happening. And we can see the supplies were food, medicine, seeds for crops, clothes for civilians, and they did not want that reaching the people there. They're making the people suffer for fighting back. Poroshenko is out there, and he wants to reassure you that Ukrainian armed forces and I personally, as the Supreme Commander, give clear guarantees that we will adhere to the Minsk Agreement and we will not launch an offensive. Well, that's a red flag for me right there. If he is out there telling everyone that they're not going to mount an offensive, we know something big is coming. But he said, but if the Ukrainian troops are under attack, very interesting, we will make all efforts to ensure their protection. And we will then introduce martial law immediately. They're already setting this up. Yes, they will create a false flag so it looks like the southeastern people have attacked the Ukrainian troops. They will say, we have not mounted any type of offensive. We're responding to the attack. And now, like I said, as Poroshenko, I will implement martial law in the southeastern region. We can see this is exactly what they are planning to do. We see the UK is basically having a huge joint warrior drill, and the numbers are very big. 13,000 personnel from 14 countries operating more than 50 ships and submarines, as well as 70 aircraft. This is UK with NATO in this joint drill. And they're saying this has nothing to do with Russia whatsoever. But of course, as we know, this has everything to do with Russia. They're flexing their muscles. They're convincing everyone they need to get ready for war. And this is what they're doing. Russia is out there, and they're saying because of all the military assets moving into the Baltic region, you have to remember the U.S. had that parade through the Baltic region with all the armed forces, and they were showing off. And we can see that Russia now is looking at the situation and saying, listen, we are going to increase the amount of troops and assets in this area to protect Russia. And we knew this was going to happen because we see NATO building up, US building up, and now, of course, China, Russia, they're doing the same to counter what is coming. The United States now is planning globally integrated operations in which all intelligence and control means would be pulled into an integrated circuit resembling the internet. It will be a private internet where everything will be connected. A global integrated campaign spelled in evolution from the strategic level operation. It would be conducted simultaneously on land, on the high seas, in space, and in cyberspace. In the course of such operations, highly mobile combined forces will be formed primarily on the basis of U.S. military units in various parts of the world. The United States plans to extend the forward deployment of its armed forces, which implies the permanent or temporary presence of troops in the territories of more than 100 countries around the world. We can see that they're preparing and getting ready for this major war. When will it hit? We don't know, but we're looking at the indicators. We're seeing over the last 2 years, military assets and troop movements all being built up all around the globe, in the Pacific, in the Middle East, in Africa, and near Russia in Eastern Europe. The U.S. State Department right now, they're trying to explain away why they haven't been rescuing Americans in Yemen. And they're saying that we have giving announcements, we're making arrangements to help these people. And there are 20 Americans that boarded a Russian plane saying that we haven't heard anything from America whatsoever. And of course, Marie Harf is out there saying, we have been collaborating for many, many weeks now with the people, and we've been trying to help them, trying to tell them to go to different places. And we warn the Americans, don't go to Yemen. But you still have the responsibility. You have warships sitting right outside. And Russia is evacuating the people. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And we have to think about the situation there. Why in the world would they want to leave the American people in there? I mean, do they want something to happen where they can blame it on the Houthis, saying, the Houthis now are attacking the Americans and they killed 2 of them? Even though it was from a bomb run from Saudi Arabia or from a missile launch from the U.S.? I mean, it seems like they have some type of agenda because they are not ready and willing to go into Yemen to rescue Americans. They really don't care. And it looks like they might be setting them up for something else. I mean, reality is that 20 Americans on Russian-bound flights from Yemen told RT that they had been left to their own devices and had to resort to help from private organizations and foreign governments in order to flee the country. Others spent a lot of time desperately trying to find a way out of Yemen. And of course, the government's trying to explain it all away, that it's everyone else's fault. It reminds me of kids who blame other people for what they've done. I'm not saying every kid is like this. Or the U.S. government is acting like kids, I should say, where they're blaming everyone else in the world for everything that's going wrong. And once you see this, you know why this is happening. It is really them who are not being adults and taking responsibility. Instead, they blame everything else except for themselves. We see it all around the world with the U.S. government, with these so-called leaders. They blame everything and take no responsibility whatsoever. I mean, Obama is urging the Saudi Arabia ruler to continually bomb Yemen. And of course, they told us that Yemen was a classic case of success. Really? It's really a success? Those Iranian cargo ships, which are not Iranian battleships coming into Yemen, they are now turned away and leaving. They have humanitarian aid, and of course they're blocking it from reaching the people in Yemen. Iranian media claims that the Islamic State, which is a proxy army for Israel, UK, the United States, they're saying they have evidence now that the Islamic State has Israeli-made weapons, and they receive them from the United States and Israel. And we understand that the United States has been dropping weapons to the Islamic State, and how many mistakes can they possibly make? They keep telling us it's a mistake, but we're starting to figure out that they're actually really dropping the weapons for the Islamic State because it is a proxy army for Israel, for the United States. And there is more and more evidence popping up that, yeah, this is what's really happening. U.S. historian Webster Tarpley also shared the similar idea, stating that the United States created the Islamic State to use the jihadists as its secret army to destabilize the Middle East. And that's exactly what's going on. We can see the Islamic State now is claiming they shot down an army aircraft near key military airport in southern Syria. Now, of course, as we know, they want to put up a no-fly zone. They're trying once again to show that the Islamic State has the ability to knock down a plane. And of course, it happened in Syria, and they want a no-fly zone. Turkey has been pushing for this. The United States definitely wants this. Even though they deny it, this is what they've been striving for, and they're trying to figure out a way to do this. We see Iraq right now. The Iraqi officials are saying the Islamic State is using chlorine gas in the city of Ramadi. And they're saying that they have the gas. They've been using it. And all these attacks in Syria is coming from the Islamic State. It's not coming from Assad. And you would think the United States government central bankers, since we're going after the Islamic State, would be all up in arms like, oh my God, they're using chemical weapons. Oh my God, but nothing. Because they know they need to use them in battle. Because they don't really have the numbers to fight against the people in these countries. So they have to use any tactic they possibly can. And this is why the Free Syrian Army was using sarin gas and other gases and doing horrific things. And this is all backed by the United States, UK, Israel, and other nations. We see 94.2% of terror plots are basically manufactured by the Department of Justice, CIA, and FBI. Look at all these cases that they keep bringing up to us. Almost every single one was a patsy. None of these people had the ability to do anything on their own. None of them had a plan until the FBI got involved and planted the idea. Some of these people are mentally disturbed. And other people, the informants, helped them by getting the material, by getting them the maps, by planning out the targets, by doing all the work, and then eventually just blaming it on them. Most of the people had no idea what was going on. It is all completely manufactured. We see the Statue of Liberty today was evacuated after a suspicious package was reported, and they shut down everything. And let me just say, if there was going to be a real terrorist and they were going to do something, they would just do it. They wouldn't put a suspicious package, leave it there for a couple days, make a phone call. It would happen right away. Most of this is manufactured to keep the scare, the fear going. We see it all around the world because we have to remember, governments need people to be afraid so they can control them and make them do things they normally wouldn't do. And this is why we continually see all of this every single day. And this is why they keep the troops on the ground. This is why they keep saying, oh, we have to protect you. We have to take away more of your rights. We have to block internet sites. We will make the decisions for you because you can't make them. Well, if they truly wanted us to protect ourselves, they would come out and say, listen, every person needs a weapon because we really have terrorists. We want you all to be safe. You wouldn't take away the people's rights. You would give them more rights. You would give them more, the ability to do more to protect. They would say, get into groups in your community to protect the community from outside terrorism. Work with your law enforcement. Put together groups just like a community would. If there is high crime in your neighborhood, what do? Do you look towards the government to help you? No. The community bands together and they have people looking out, having a watch to thwart crime. Well, it's the same thing if there's really terrorism. Why do we need to depend on the government? We don't. We can do it on our own. And if the government was that concerned, this is the approach they would take. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.